What if, at this very moment, everything you call reality were nothing more than an ingeniously crafted illusion, a stage illuminated by invisible forces unseen by your eyes? Imagine that every beat of your heart, every silent thought, and even every involuntary gesture were part of a much larger symphony, governed by laws most prefer to ignore. This idea, at once fascinating and uncomfortable, is capable of shattering the ground of certainties you've learned to believe in. And it was precisely this abyss that Nikola Tesla dared to open, when he said that the secrets of the universe can only be understood in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. He wasn't using words as poetic metaphors. He was asserting a fundamental law that science still cannot fully explore. Tesla saw beyond the obvious. While the world occupied itself with machines, gears, and material goods, he saw matter as a mask, a disguise that conceals the true nature of the cosmos. To him, everything that appeared solid was merely condensed energy, invisible waves vibrating at rhythms so rapid that human senses cannot keep up. And if this is true, then the reality you live in is not a fixed landscape, but a ceaseless dance of frequencies, a dance that responds to you, whether you like it or not. It is at this point that the first discomfort arises. If everything is energy, if everything vibrates, to what extent is your life a reflection of the vibrations you emit? Perhaps what you call bad luck, failure, or loss is nothing more than the frequency you sustained without realizing it. This perspective is frightening because it removes the comfort of external guilt. You can no longer blame luck, destiny, or even God for the paths you take. The question becomes direct and disturbing. What am I really emitting? And even more disturbing, what am I unknowingly attracting? Tesla didn't speak like a mystic oblivious to science. He was a laboratory man, an obsessive researcher, someone who devoted entire nights to experiments no one else dared imagine. While others saw only darkness, he saw equations shimmering in space. While others believed in the rigidity of matter, he perceived that each atom pulsed like a musical note. His genius lay in uniting two languages that humanity has always treated as separate, that of science and that of spirituality. For him, both sought the same thing, albeit via different paths, to decipher the invisible thought that sustains the universe. This way of seeing the world profoundly shakes our notion of stability. We've been trained to believe that reality is fixed, that the earth beneath our feet is solid, that the laws of physics are immutable, and that our lives unfold on a predictable board. But faced with Tesla's vision, we realize that everything is movement, everything is vibration, everything is flux. What we call stone, iron, wood, or flesh is merely energy at different frequency levels. Therefore, the distinction we make between the solid and the spiritual is nothing more than an illusion. This presents us not only with a new scientific understanding, but also with an existential responsibility. How many times have you walked into a room and, even without hearing any words, felt a heaviness in the air? How many times have you looked at someone smiling, but inside you sensed hidden sadness or anger? How many times have you tried to disguise your feelings, but something seemed to escape you, as if your body, your eyes, or your very presence betrayed your true state? These examples show that Tesla wasn't just talking theory. He was describing a reality we experience daily without naming it. The vibrations we emit are perceived even before any gesture or word. No matter how hard we try to hide it, the invisible speaks first. And here arises a second conflict. If our vibrations escape us all the time, what is the world receiving from you? Could it be that, while you desire prosperity, you are not radiating scarcity? Could it be that, while you seek love, you are not transmitting loneliness? Perhaps this is why so many become frustrated when they try to apply ready-made self-help formulas, or when they repeat mantras believing the universe will bend to their will. Tesla never said that the cosmos responds to desires. He claimed that the cosmos responds to frequencies. The universe doesn't listen to what you ask for. It responds to who you are. This realization shakes our emotional structure because it reverses the order in which we were taught to think. Since childhood, we've been told that if we ask hard enough, if we believe intensely, we'll get what we want. But what if the secret isn't in asking, but in sustaining a coherent vibration? If, instead of begging the universe, the task was to align our energy with what we desire to experience? That changes everything, because it's no longer about external techniques but an intimate process, an invisible choice, made with every thought and every emotion. And here comes Tesla's genius. He saw no difference between an electric motor and the human heart. For him, both operated according to the same principle: resonance. A motor only generates energy if it is in tune with the electric current. Likewise, life only generates fulfillment if we are in tune with the higher frequencies. This idea isn't poetic, it's physics. If two strings vibrate at the same note, one makes the other resonate. If a magnetic field comes into contact with another, both interact. The entire universe works this way. Why should human life be an exception? However, there is a dilemma we cannot avoid. If everything is vibration, why do we experience so much chaos? If there is order in everything, why do we feel fear, pain, and loss? Tesla would answer, because we only see fragments. Chaos is not the absence of order, it is a lack of vision. We are like observers of a mosaic who see only the loose pieces and are terrified that they cannot see the whole picture. But unlike a child facing a puzzle, we have a responsibility to accept that order exists, even when we don't perceive it. This opens another abyss of reflection. If order is real, if vibrations are the language of the cosmos, then we are not puppets of blind forces. There are no coincidences. There are no accidents. There is resonance. There is echo. There is reflection. Everything we experience returns from the energy we emit, consciously or unconsciously. This idea liberates because it gives us the keys to our own lives, but it also frightens because it takes away the comfort of excuses. We can no longer blame chance, luck, society, or even God. We are standing before the mirror, and the reflection is inevitable. And this is where Tesla becomes even more relevant. In a world that insists on ready-made formulas for happiness, on platitudes of motivation, on illusions of external control, he reminds us of something uncomfortable. It's not about what you desire, but about what you vibrate. It's not about words, but about frequencies. It's not about superficial beliefs, but about what your heart and mind emit every second, even when you don't say anything. The universe cannot be fooled. It responds precisely to the signal you transmit. If this is true, then Tesla's invitation is not just scientific, it is profoundly psychological and spiritual. He asks us to have the courage to look within, to face our own frequencies and admit that we are often prisoners of lower vibrations: fear, anger, distrust, insecurity. He also shows us that we can change. Resonance is not a prison, it is an opportunity. Just as an out-of-tune instrument can be adjusted, we too can recalibrate our energy. But to do so, we must first recognize the sound we are emitting. And perhaps this is the most provocative point of this first stage. If all reality responds to the vibration you sustain, how can you continue living on autopilot? How can you continue repeating unconscious patterns without realizing that every thought and every emotion is shaping the world around you? This isn't a distant theory, it's an immediate call, because like it or not, you are emitting frequencies right now, and the universe is responding. It is precisely in this paradox between freedom and responsibility that the power of Tesla's words lies. He gives us a map, but he doesn't walk it for us. He turns on the light, but it is we who decide whether we have the courage to look. And here arises the question that paves the way for the next part. If the cosmos is vibration, if each of us is a constant emitter, then why do we still feel so much chaos within and without? This is the provocation Tesla leaves us hanging in the air, and only by delving deeper will we be able to understand why chaos is not what it seems, and how it may merely be a reflection of our own inability to see the hidden order. Have you ever noticed how we call chaos everything we can't understand? It's curious to note that, from a young age, we grow up believing that disorder is synonymous with failure, injustice, and a lack of meaning. When something unexpected happens, a sudden loss, a failure we can't explain, an opportunity that closes before our eyes, we immediately feel like the world has lost its way. But is this truly chaos, or just our inability to see the bigger picture? Nikola Tesla claimed that disorder doesn't exist. What we call confusion is merely the human mind's limitation in perceiving the hidden pattern behind things. For him, order is always present, even if we can't see it at that moment. This idea completely changes the way we interpret life, because it forces us to face an uncomfortable truth. Perhaps we are not victims of an indifferent universe, but participants in a system so precise that it leaves no room for coincidence. Imagine a child facing a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle scattered across a table. They look at the colorful, disconnected fragments and believe they will never form a complete picture. To them, that pile of pieces is pure chaos. However, an adult nearby who has put together the same puzzle before knows there is an invisible order slowly revealing itself. The child feels despair, the adult feels patience. What's the difference? It's not the object, but the capacity for perception. What if our lives were exactly like this? We, like children facing the chessboard of the universe, look only at the scattered pieces, losses, pain, obstacles, and believe there is no meaning. But Tesla would tell us that the meaning is there, even when we don't see it. Chaos is merely our spiritual myopia. This thought opens up an inevitable conflict. If order always exists, why do we so often feel suffocated by a lack of control? Why are there illnesses, wars, personal tragedies? Tesla believed that the problem lies not in the absence of harmony, but in the fact that our perception is still fragmented. He compared reality to a grand symphony. If you enter an orchestra without knowing the score, you might believe the sound is confusing, even chaotic. But when we listen to the music from beginning to end, we realize that each note, even those that sound strange, had a function in the whole. Such is life. What sounds like dissonance today may reveal itself tomorrow to be part of a greater harmony. But to accept this, we need courage. It is much easier to accuse the universe of unfairness than to admit that we may be incapable of understanding the entire melody. Tesla didn't speak simply as a scientist. He spoke as someone who experienced the tensions of this paradox firsthand. Despite being one of humanity's greatest geniuses, he lived much of his life surrounded by financial hardship and misunderstanding. Many of his projects were ridiculed. His inventions were copied or appropriated by others. To any ordinary person, this trajectory could be seen as a failure or even a cruel twist of fate. But Tesla never saw himself as a victim of chaos. He understood that the path of creation required overcoming misunderstandings, that the world's resistance was part of a larger pattern that would one day be recognized. This stance didn't erase his pain, but it did give him a different perspective. And perhaps this is the invitation he leaves us, to view moments of apparent disorder not as enemies, but as stages in a still invisible order. In everyday life, this idea manifests itself in simple situations. Think about the time you lost a job and thought it was over, only to discover months later that this very event made way for something much better. Think about a friendship that ended painfully, but freed you to meet people who truly added to your life. Think about the days when a traffic delay prevented you from arriving somewhere on time, only to realize that this delay saved you from something worse. How many times have we been through this? In the moment, we call it chaos. Later, we realize there was a secret order at work. It's as if life always knew more than we did, and only with time do we come to understand that nothing was by chance. This perception, however, is not comfortable. It requires us to abandon the illusion of absolute control. We are educated to believe that we have complete control over life, that all we need to do is plan and act with discipline for everything to happen as we desire. But Tesla warns us that the universe doesn't work that way. We don't control the flow. What we do control is the frequency we choose to sustain within it. If we vibrate fear, we attract experiences that echo that fear. We vibrate trust, we open space for experiences of expansion. Order doesn't disappear when we feel fear. What changes is how we resonate with it. Thus, the chaos we see outside is often just a reflection of the disorder we carry within. This creates deep emotional tension because it forces us to ask an uncomfortable question. Aren't we the creators of the chaos we so often complain about? Think of a workplace where everyone is tense, insecure, and stressed. Even without words, the air becomes heavy. Every gesture is filled with irritation. Every silence is suffocating. Everyone believes the environment is chaotic, but in reality, they are the ones fueling it with fragmented vibrations. The same happens in families where communication breaks down, and everyone isolates themselves in their own pain. We call this broken relationships, but, in essence, it's a disharmonious vibrational field that everyone contributes to sustaining. When we fail to recognize this, we fall into the illusion that the chaos is external, when in fact, it begins within us. Tesla saw the human being as an antenna, an antenna that both transmits and receives signals. And like any antenna, it can be well calibrated or completely out of tune. When we don't calibrate our vibrations, we end up picking up noise, interference, and dissonance. This noise manifests as anxiety, as constant stress, as a feeling that life is out of control. But in reality, it's not life that's lost its way. It's our frequency that's lost its alignment. Chaos is the reflection of the misaligned antenna, and that's why so many feel like nothing works, even when they try hard, because it's not just about what we do, but about the vibration that sustains each action. The fascinating thing about this perspective is that it gives us back the power of choice. We can't stop life from bringing us challenges. We can't avoid loss, illness, or sudden changes. But we can choose how we react to these experiences. We can react with fear and sustain the field of chaos, or we can seek the serenity of trusting that a greater order is unfolding. This choice isn't easy. It requires training, awareness, and courage. But once made, it completely transforms the way we experience events. It's like exchanging foggy glasses for lenses that reveal a hidden pattern. Think about how many times you believed your life was in ruins, only to discover later that that moment was the beginning of a new phase. How many times pain turned out to be a passage to something greater. Tesla would teach us that chaos is not a sign of abandonment, but part of a design we can't yet fully see. And this thought brings a powerful surprise. Chaos can be an ally. It can be the signal that something needs to be reorganized, that a new vibration is about to emerge. What seems like destruction may just be the preparation for a new cycle of harmony. But to see this, we need to break the addiction to believing we are victims of random forces. This belief imprisons us because it makes us wait for something external to correct the universe's supposed error. Tesla would say that the universe doesn't make mistakes. We are the ones who need to realign ourselves. This vision doesn't eliminate pain, but it gives it meaning. And giving meaning to pain is the first way to transcend it. It's what transforms suffering into learning and despair into trust. This reflection leads us to a crucial question. If chaos doesn't actually exist, but only as a limited perception, why do we continue to feed it as if it were absolute? Perhaps because it's easier to believe in chaos than to accept the responsibility of adjusting our own vibration. Perhaps because chaos gives us excuses, while the invisible order gives us responsibilities. When we believe in chaos, we can complain, blame, and give up. When we believe in order, we must take responsibility for aligning ourselves. And this requires maturity. Tesla, with his worldview, forces us to mature. He doesn't offer us magic formulas, but he does deliver a stark truth. Life always has order, and we are always part of it, whether we realize it or not. Chaos is merely a reflection of our resistance to accepting this reality. When we stop fighting the apparent disorder and begin to listen to what it's trying to show us, the larger pattern begins to reveal itself. And here arises an inevitable suspense, paving the way for the next stage. If chaos is merely an illusion created by a mind incapable of seeing the whole, if there is always an invisible order at work, why do we so often insist on living as if lost in the midst of chance? What forces bind us to the habit of feeding fragmented vibrations? And furthermore, if the universe responds to the frequencies we emit, how can we change the quality of our vibration to experience a more harmonious reality? These are the questions Tesla leaves us echoing in the silence. And they are what lead us to the next step, understanding how our own emotions, thoughts, and desires create echoes that shape the world we live in. What if I told you that what you call thought isn't born entirely within you, that your mind isn't a closed vessel, but an antenna in constant exchange with an invisible field, capturing and transmitting signals that shape your experience? Nikola Tesla argued that the human brain functions more as a transmitter and receiver than as an isolated generator of ideas. To him, each thought was like a wave tuned to a specific frequency, spreading through space and continuing to exist, even after it has left your mind. This means that nothing is lost. No emotion, no feeling, no word vanishes into the void. Everything reverberates, propagates, and resonates elsewhere in the universal field. What you emit, in some form, always returns. But are we prepared to handle the responsibility of this vision? Imagine for a moment that every time you become filled with anger or fear, you're not just feeling personal discomfort, but emitting waves that reach people, places, and situations far beyond your immediate perception. Your fear, even silent, creates a vibration that echoes through space. Your love, even undeclared, spreads like a luminous wave, finding resonance in distant hearts. This situation forces us to rethink how we understand the influence of our lives on the world. How far does the impact of our vibrations extend? And could part of the collective weight we feel today be a reflection of the emotional waves we ourselves helped generate? How many times have you walked into a room and, without understanding why, noticed a tension in the air, as if something invisible had altered the atmosphere before you even arrived? There were no words, no obvious gestures, but you felt it. This is the effect of the invisible vibration that circulates between people. Tesla said that waves never die. They only transform and find new points of resonance. What you think is not just yours. What you feel does not belong to you alone. Every second, you feed a field that goes beyond your own life. This is not mysticism. It is physics in its most essential form. Energy is not lost. It only changes form. But if everything reverberates, what melody are you spreading? Don't we spend most of our lives emitting noise, unaware of the impact it generates? Think about how many times you've mentally repeated phrases of scarcity, fear, and distrust. Think about how many times you've allowed silent resentments to take up space within you. Don't these vibrations end up creating fields of attraction that sustain the very thing you'd like to avoid? If everything is frequency, how can we believe our thoughts have no real effect? Now consider the opposite. People who seem to radiate peace, even in the midst of difficulties. Have you ever noticed that being around them is like breathing lighter air? That somehow they transform environments simply by their presence? The secret lies not in the words, but in the frequency. It's their vibration that creates this field. Tesla saw this clearly and believed that, in the future, humanity would understand the power of emotions as much as it understood the power of electricity. If electromagnetic waves can cross continents, why not admit that emotional waves can cross consciousness? What if every great historical transformation hadn't begun with speeches, but with vibrations? Think of the leaders who mobilized crowds: Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa. Their words were important, but what truly united people was the vibrational field they sustained. They transmitted courage, hope, and love on such an intense scale that thousands resonated to the same pattern. This is collective resonance. This is proof that vibration is more powerful than logic. But if leaders of light can awaken multitudes, what about leaders of fear? What happens when billions vibrate in tune with panic, anger, or hatred? Have you ever thought about how negative news spreads faster than positive news? It's not just because the human brain is drawn to the unusual, but because fear has an immediate resonance. It spreads like wildfire, finding an echo in existing insecurities. The result is a collective field saturated with dense vibrations, which feed back into one another without us even realizing it. Could it be that the true chaos of our era is not external, but vibrational? And could what we call global crises be nothing more than a reflection of a collective field out of balance? Tesla was clear that humanity still lived like a misaligned antenna, emitting more noise than harmony. He saw humankind trying to manipulate the universe through superficial desires, while ignoring the fact that the cosmos responds not to requests, but to vibrational patterns. There's no point repeating words of hope if the heart remains trapped in fear. There's no point in wishing for prosperity if the predominant vibration is scarcity. The universe responds to who you are, not what you say. This is the key so many still refuse to turn. But if reality is a direct reflection of vibration, why are we so deceived by words? Perhaps because words are easy to use and difficult to measure, while vibrations require inner discipline. It's simpler to repeat a positive phrase than to sustain a coherent field of confidence in the face of difficulties. The universe, however, is not fooled. Real vibration always prevails over rhetoric. What you truly transmit is what shapes the field around you. This realization shouldn't fill us with fear, but with responsibility. Do you realize that, at every moment, you carry the power to reorganize your life simply by the frequency you choose to sustain? What if the failures you so lament weren't punishments, but merely reflections of the frequency you've maintained? How many times have we tried to change our lives by simply altering external circumstances, without realizing that we're still vibrating at the same rate? We change jobs, cities, relationships, but we carry the same frequency with us. And inevitably, we recreate the same problems. What we call a repetition of fate is often just a repetition of vibration. This doesn't mean you're doomed, but perhaps you haven't yet made the essential shift, a shift in internal frequency. This thought opens the door to an uncomfortable revelation. If vibration is the origin of everything, then there is no such thing as neutrality. You are always emitting something, even when you believe you are still. Silence vibrates. Indifference vibrates. Apathy vibrates. There is no empty space. This means that even the moments when you think you are disconnected are actually feeding a field. And then the inevitable question arises: what kind of field are you sustaining in the silence of your life? Tesla saw the human mind as a radio dial. With every thought, every emotion, you tune into a station. Some stations convey fear, others confidence, others inspiration. You choose the frequency you listen to and transmit. But how often do we realize we're stuck on low stations, repeating the same sad songs without the courage to change the dial? Aren't we addicted to the frequencies of scarcity, fear, and self-sabotage? If the universe is an orchestra of frequencies, why do we insist on sustaining discordant notes? This is where reflection becomes practical. If the brain is an antenna, how can we learn to consciously calibrate it? Tesla believed this required practice and repetition, just like any other skill. He spent hours in silence, not as an escape, but to clear internal noise and tune into higher frequencies. Silence for him was not a void, but a laboratory. And you? When was the last time you silenced yourself to perceive the music your mind is truly playing? The silence you fear may be the key to realizing whether you are in harmony or dissonance with life. Think about how your energy changes when you're surrounded by pessimistic people. Even if you try to hold your ground, you gradually begin to absorb the weight of those vibrations. Now consider the opposite. When you're around someone full of confidence, who believes in life and exudes serenity, you feel as if your own energy is elevated. This happens because vibrations respect no barriers. They communicate on an invisible level, but much more powerful than words. Could it be that we underestimate how much we are shaped by the frequencies around us? If this is true, then a new responsibility emerges. It's not enough to simply care about what you say or do. You must care about what you vibrate, because the universe responds not to your stated intentions but to your true frequency, and this frequency cannot be hidden. It manifests itself in every detail, in every gesture, in every silence. There is no vibrational disguise. The world perceives. Life responds, and the cosmos responds precisely. And here arises the suspense that paves the way for the next stage. If every thought is a wave that never fades, if every emotion becomes part of a collective field that shapes reality, how can we learn to consciously choose the frequencies we sustain? What does it mean in practice to be able to change the station of our own mind? What if this is the true secret Tesla tried to convey to us? That freedom lies not in controlling the external world, but in learning to master the internal dial of our own. What if your life were like a musical instrument, constantly tuned or out of tune by the frequencies you choose to sustain? Nikola Tesla saw the human being exactly this way, as a vibrational body that responds to invisible patterns, just as a violin vibrates when a corresponding note is played next to it. What seems poetic is, in fact, physics. Every atom vibrates, every cell pulsates at specific frequencies, and the sum of these movements creates the field we call life. This is not just philosophy, it is science in its purest form. Recent studies from the Institute of Heart Mathematics, for example, have shown that the human heart emits an electromagnetic field 5,000 times stronger than that of the brain. This field can be detected from several meters away and directly influences the emotional state of those nearby. What you feel doesn't stay locked inside, it literally spreads throughout the environment. If this is already proven, why do we still insist on acting as if our emotions are private matters, with no effect on the world? Imagine a company where leaders live in a constant state of fear. They pressure employees, creating an environment of tension and excessive demands. Even if they don't realize it, the vibrational field of this fear spreads throughout the entire team. The result? Statistics reveal that toxic work environments increase stress-related illness rates by up to 50%, increase absenteeism by 37%, and reduce productivity by up to 20%. Chaos, in this case, arises not from external factors, but from the collective internal vibration that shapes every detail of the organization's reality. Tesla, if faced with these numbers, would say that the company suffers not from a lack of technical management, but from a lack of vibrational management. This same phenomenon repeats itself in homes. Think of a family where anger is recurrent. Words may be disguised, smiles may appear in photos, but the vibration of resentment permeates the environment. Children who grow up in such homes, according to research from the American Psychological Association, are up to 30% more likely to suffer from anxiety and depression in adulthood. It's not just genetics. It's not just learned behavior. It's the vibrational field shaping biology and the psyche. Have you ever felt, upon entering a home, the difference in atmosphere between a home in harmony and one in constant conflict? What you felt wasn't imagination. It was attunement. Tesla believed that vibration was the basis of everything. He demonstrated, for example, how solid structures could be destroyed by resonance alone. One of his best-known experiments, he created a small vibrating device that, when attached to a metal structure, produced waves at such a precise frequency that it shook the entire building, so much so that neighbors called the police, believing it was an earthquake. Such a small machine can shake tons of iron and concrete. What can recurring emotions do to the human body, which is infinitely more sensitive? Is it a coincidence that psychosomatic illnesses are on the rise worldwide? Is it coincidence that the World Health Organization has already classified stress as the epidemic of the 21st century? Or are we living in the midst of a collective vibrational collapse? Now think about nature. A walk in a forest has measurable effects on the human body. Japanese research on Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing, shows that just 2 hours of walking among trees reduces cortisol levels by up to 24%, lowers blood pressure, and strengthens the immune system. There are no words, no conscious actions, just the vibration of nature reorganizing the human field. Tesla would say this proves how vibrational harmony is not a luxury, but a vital necessity. We need environments that resonate with a coherent frequency, otherwise we get sick. But if we know this, why do we insist on building cities that vibrate with noise, excess, and dissonance? This contrast reveals a disturbing point. Modern civilization has created spaces increasingly saturated with chaotic vibrations, heavy traffic, noise pollution, and excessive digital stimuli. The human body was not designed to constantly live in disharmonious environments. Neuroscience research has shown that excessive notifications and visual stimuli fragment attention and increase the production of stress-related hormones by up to 40%. Could what we call sensory fatigue actually be nothing more than an inability to sustain high vibrations in increasingly chaotic environments? But it's not just statistics that reveal this truth. Consider personal situations. Perhaps you've experienced entering a place and immediately feeling the urge to leave, unable to explain why. Or, on the contrary, you've encountered people who, without saying a word, brought peace and clarity to your mind. These phenomena are not coincidences. They are vibrations. The invisible speaks before words, and the body captures what the mind hasn't yet perceived. Tesla called this the silent language of the universe. This understanding raises an inevitable question. If everything vibrates and everything influences, how can we protect our frequency amidst so much interference? The answer may seem simple, but it requires discipline. It's necessary to learn to consciously calibrate our internal field. Small practices such as deep breathing, meditation, or even moments of daily silence act as vibrational filters. Studies show that just 5 minutes of rhythmic breathing increases cardiac coherence, creating harmonic patterns in the heart's electromagnetic field. This means that, with small choices, we can regain the alignment that the environment tries to steal from us. Tesla argued that humanity's true revolution would not be technological, but vibrational. He saw machines merely as mirrors of what already exists in nature and in human beings. Just as radio waves traverse continents, emotional waves traverse consciousnesses. The big question is, which waves do we choose to emit and reinforce every day? If you constantly connect to vibrations of fear and scarcity, you are amplifying exactly what you would like to avoid. If, on the contrary, you sustain trust and gratitude, you are creating resonance that attracts corresponding experiences. This opens up an even deeper reflection. What if great collective tragedies were not just the result of political decisions or natural disasters, but also of vibrational fields fueled by millions of people simultaneously. Records show that during global events of great emotional impact, such as terrorist attacks or catastrophes, sensors of the Earth's magnetic field have registered significant changes. Science still doesn't fully explain this correlation, but it suggests something Tesla already intuited. We are connected to the Earth and the cosmos on a much deeper vibrational level than we imagine. The planet responds to what we feel. This isn't mysticism, it's interconnection. Given this perspective, a question arises that can completely change the way we live. What is the vibrational legacy you are leaving in the world? More than external achievements, perhaps what truly matters is the quality of the frequency you have sustained throughout your life. If each emotion is a wave that continues to reverberate, then your presence never disappears. You continue to exist in the field, even after you're gone. This means that the way you choose to vibrate today not only affects your life, but also becomes part of humanity's energetic memory. And here, just when we believe we understand the depth of this mystery, a pattern break emerges. Because the issue isn't just individual, it's also collective. What happens when millions vibrate with fear at the same time? What happens when billions feed anxiety and distrust? We are, without realizing it, creating a global low-frequency field that inevitably generates corresponding realities, crises, conflicts, wars. But what if millions chose instead to sustain hope, love, and trust? What would happen to the world? Tesla believed this would be humanity's true quantum leap, not a new machine, but a new vibration. If all this is true, there remains an urgent invitation. Observe what you emit, because your life is not isolated. Every thought, every emotion, every silence is part of the universal symphony. And if the world seems plunged into chaos, perhaps it is merely a reflection of the frequencies we have not yet had the courage to change. But are we ready for this responsibility? Do we have the courage to admit that collective transformation begins in the invisible, within each of us? It is at this point that the narrative opens again in suspense. Because if all reality is shaped by vibrations, if even the planet responds to what we feel, how can we learn, practically and consistently, to raise our frequencies and create more harmonious realities? What concrete steps can we take to align science and spirituality in a new way of living? These are the questions Tesla leaves us with, and they lead us to the next level of this journey. Understanding that changing frequency is not a detail, it is the essence of our freedom. Imagine for a moment that every gesture you make, every word you utter, and even every silence you maintain is not limited to an isolated event in time, but rather becomes waves that traverse space and continue to resonate in invisible dimensions. Nikola Tesla deeply believed that the universe is a vast vibrational web, a continuous symphony where nothing is lost, only transformed. A machine can emit waves that cross continents, and radios can pick up signals sent from thousands of kilometers away. Why not imagine that our emotions and thoughts do the same on an even deeper scale? This vision is not only inspiring but also disturbing, because it forces us to acknowledge the responsibility of what we hold within ourselves. After all, if every emotion is energy in motion, it does not end within us, but finds correspondence somewhere, in someone, at some point. How many times have you believed that a bad feeling was unimportant, simply because it was internal and hidden? How many times have you allowed yourself to harbor resentment or fear, believing it affected nothing but your own heart? And yet, when we observe how electromagnetic fields spread and interact, it becomes clear that what happens within you inevitably affects others. Science has shown that the human heart emits measurable signals that can be picked up by sensitive devices a few meters away. But Tesla would argue that this is only the surface, that the real influence crosses even broader boundaries, invisible to current instruments. What if the anxiety gripping millions of people today is less an individual phenomenon and more a collective field that feeds on itself, growing with each new fearful thought, each new emotion of distrust? This hypothesis gains strength when we look at moments in history when entire societies were dominated by similar emotional waves. The 20th century witnessed tragedies born not of chance, but of the accumulation of negative vibrations: fear, hatred, resentment. Totalitarian regimes grew not only through political discourse, but through collective emotional fields that fueled multitudes. Fear spread faster than any pamphlet. Anger vibrated louder than any speech. Tesla would understand this as an extreme case of collective resonance. When millions of human antennae vibrate in tune with the same frequency, a field is created that is virtually impossible to resist. Have you ever noticed how in the midst of a panicked crowd, even the calmest person feels their breathing quicken? This phenomenon is not psychological in the traditional sense. It is vibrational. But if the dark side is so evident, what about the luminous potential of this same law? Think of events that mobilized masses toward peace, solidarity, and hope. Recall moments when entire societies came together to help victims of disasters, or when a vision of justice mobilized millions of voices around the planet. In these moments, we feel as if there is something greater than ourselves, as if an invisible field connected us in a single pulse. Research from the Global Consciousness Project, led by scientists at Princeton University, recorded statistically significant changes in random generators during events of great collective impact, such as the September 11th attacks or the death of Princess Diana. Machines designed to generate unpredictable numbers suddenly exhibited unusual patterns, as if responding to the global emotional field. This suggests that human consciousness, vibrating en masse, can literally influence physical systems. Tesla would undoubtedly have seen in these data confirmation of his vision. The mind is not isolated. It is part of a cosmic network where everything resonates. Now bring this understanding to your daily life. How many times have you felt your energy drain after talking to someone who constantly complains? How many times has your mood changed when listening to upbeat music or walking in nature? These common experiences are simple proof of a grand phenomenon. Vibration is contagious. And if so, the inevitable question is, what are you transmitting to the world, consciously or unconsciously? Perhaps you've never stopped to consider that every time you enter a room, you change the field of that environment, even if only by an almost imperceptible fraction. But this fraction adds up to others, and together they build the collective atmosphere. That's why, when several people sustain a vibration of fear, the environment feels heavy, suffocating, almost impossible to breathe. Likewise, when someone enters with confidence and serenity, it's as if they've opened a window and allowed the air to circulate. Tesla compared life to an orchestra. Each individual is like an instrument that plays incessantly, whether they want to or not. Some emit harmonious notes, others are out of tune. The end result is the collective symphony of humanity. He said that true evolution would come when we learn to play in harmony, aware that we are not solitary musicians, but part of a much larger composition. This requires discipline. It requires constant attention, because it's not enough to want to play beautifully. You need to train your ear, adjust the strings, tune the instrument. And in the human case, this means daily cultivating thoughts, emotions, and attitudes that resonate at higher frequencies. Have you ever wondered if the life you lead today is music or noise? This question may seem abstract, but it has practical and measurable effects. Studies in positive psychology show that people who cultivate a daily gratitude practice have 23% fewer symptoms of stress and sleep, on average 30 minutes more per night. It's not just about feeling better emotionally, but about creating fields of coherence that affect physical health. Another study from Harvard Medical School revealed that people who meditate regularly experience consistent reductions in blood pressure and heart rate, effects comparable to the use of medication, but achieved only by consciously altering internal vibration. These data reveal that Tesla's seemingly distant wisdom is already supported by modern science. Changing internal frequency also changes external reality. But here comes a point of tension that can be uncomfortable. If we know that vibrations affect our lives so decisively, why do we still choose to sustain negative frequencies? Why does it seem easier to complain than to be grateful, to distrust than to trust, to fear than to believe? Perhaps because, like any addiction, dense emotions create a false sense of familiarity. They become a vibrational habit. The brain, conditioned to negative thought patterns, creates automatic pathways that keep us stuck in the same cycle. Breaking this requires conscious effort. It requires courage to face the discomfort of change. It's like changing the radio station. The new song may sound strange at first, but over time, you realize that it's precisely this music that opens the way for a more harmonious life. Imagine what would happen if each person dedicated just a few minutes a day to adjusting their frequency. Not as a mystical practice, but as an exercise in vibrational hygiene, as essential as brushing your teeth or nourishing your body. The impact would be exponential. Tesla believed that it would only take a fraction of humanity vibrating at a consistently high frequency to alter the entire collective field. This isn't just hope, it's resonance physics. When a vibrant minority resonates intensely and coherently, it drags the surrounding frequencies with it. This is the power of attunement. But are we prepared to take on this role? Do we have the courage to recognize that the reality we live in is not just the result of external decisions, but of the field we sustain together? This reflection confronts us with a paradox. We want to change the world, but we rarely shift our own vibration. We desire global peace, but we sustain silent wars in our thoughts. We want collective prosperity, but we cultivate feelings of scarcity and envy. The universe, however, is not fooled by words or superficial desires. It responds only to the true frequency, and the life we see is nothing more than the exact reflection of this response. At this point, the narrative needs to provoke you more directly. Who are you being at the frequency you emit? Not who you'd like to be, not who you appear to be, but who you truly are in the silence of your vibration. This is where everything happens. This is where reality begins to form. Tesla said that humanity's greatest mistake was believing it could change the world without changing itself. For him, true power lay not in controlling external forces, but in learning to tune one's own field to higher frequencies. This was, in his view, the key to freeing humanity from repeating the same mistakes, the same tragedies, the same illusions. What if you could, from now on, consciously decide which station you will sustain? What if you could transform your mind into a transmitter of trust, hope, and gratitude, instead of fear, doubt, and resentment? This decision isn't just personal, it's collective, because every frequency you sustain adds to the global field. That's why there's no such thing as a small gesture, no such thing as an irrelevant thought, no such thing as an insignificant emotion. Everything reverberates, everything builds, everything returns. And here comes the hook that takes us to the next level of this reflection. If each individual is an antenna, and each individual vibration contributes to the collective field, how can we learn to consciously create global alignment? What practices, choices, and changes are necessary for humanity to stop being a dissonant orchestra and finally become a choir tuned to the highest frequency? This is the question Tesla leaves us suspended in the air, a question that seeks not only an answer, but also action. Because deep down, the question was never whether the universe responds to our vibrations, but whether we are ready to take responsibility for consciously choosing the music we want to play in the symphony of life. What if everything you've experienced so far wasn't a simple set of isolated suits, but a direct reflection of the vibrations you've silently sustained? If every tear, every victory, every relationship that blossomed or crumbled was part of an invisible music you were playing, consciously or not? Nikola Tesla believed that life isn't a sequence of coincidences, but an ordered field of frequencies that responds precisely to the waves we emit. Having reached this point in your journey, it's no longer enough to contemplate the beauty of this idea or feel the weight of your responsibility. It's time to transform this knowledge into daily practice, into choices that can change not only your individual life, but also the collective symphony of humanity. Have you ever noticed how many people spend years studying theories, accumulating information, but rarely actually apply what they've learned? This happens because knowledge without action becomes mere burden, a collection of ideas that bear no fruit. Tesla saw no point in discoveries that remained on paper. For him, every idea needed to find concrete expression in the world, and so it should be with understanding vibration. It's no use simply reflecting on the energy you emit. You need to transform your routine, your way of thinking, your way of feeling, so that each step is a coherent reflection of the frequency you choose to sustain. But how do we transform such a profound concept into daily practice? How do we bring the invisible into the concrete realm of choices? This is the challenge and also the opportunity. The answer lies in small, consistent gestures. Tesla said that the universe responds to precision, not chance. Likewise, your life will respond not to vague promises, but to simple, consistent habits. Imagine that your body and mind are an instrument. It's not enough to tune it once. You need to adjust daily, observe, and correct until the melody becomes clear and stable. The first step is radical observation. You need to become aware of the vibrations you're emitting right now. Ask yourself honestly, what emotions dominate my days? Anxiety, fear, resentment, or trust, gratitude, hope? This question isn't a moral one. It's not meant to judge whether you're a good or bad person. It's simply a way to reveal the vibrational field you're nurturing. Make this an exercise. 3 times a day, stop for a moment, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, what am I vibrating right now? This simple practice will already begin to change your life, because where there is awareness, there is the possibility of change. The second step is to consciously choose the frequency you want to sustain. This doesn't mean forcing false emotions, but rather cultivating small seeds that, when repeated, transform the entire field. If anxiety dominates, add moments of trust, however small. If fear gnaws at you, practice gratitude for something simple. If anger persists, consciously choose silence and pause before reacting. Studies show that writing down 3 reasons to be grateful every day, even if they seem insignificant, can reprogram your brain in just a few weeks. This isn't just psychology, it's conscious vibration. The third step is to align action and vibration. There's no point in desiring prosperity and living in habits of scarcity, desiring love and harboring resentment, desiring health and ignoring your body. Tesla asserted that coherence is the basis of harmony. If your mind, heart, and attitudes are not in tune, reality lacks stability. Choose an area of your life and observe. Do my actions reflect the frequency I wish to sustain? If they don't, make adjustments, even if small. Vibrational coherence is more powerful than any single technique. The fourth step is to protect your frequency. The world is full of noise, disharmonious fields, and people and environments that drain energy. This doesn't mean distancing yourself from everything, but learning to maintain your vibration even in the midst of chaos. Simple techniques like deep breathing, mindful pauses, or even walks in nature act as filters. Experiments have shown that just 5 minutes of rhythmic breathing is enough to reorganize cardiac coherence and align body and mind. You feel like your energy is being drained? Make this a habit. The fifth step is to expand your vibration beyond yourself. Tesla saw humanity as a collective organism, where each person is a vibrating cell. When a cell vibrates in harmony, it strengthens the whole. When it vibrates in dissonance, it makes the organism sick. What you vibrate affects not only your life, but the entire world. Every supportive word, every kind gesture, every peaceful silence contributes to elevating the collective field. You may not see the results immediately, but they exist. Like ripples spreading across water, their impact extends far beyond what your eyes can see. The sixth step is consistent practice. Nothing changes in a day, but everything changes when you repeat. Tesla spent hours contemplating and experimenting, not because he expected instant results, but because he understood that discipline is the language of the universe. Make vibration a daily practice. Breathe, meditate, write, observe. Create small rituals that serve as reminders of who you want to be. At first, it may seem like effort, but over time it becomes natural, like breathing. And the seventh step, perhaps the most important, is to trust the process. Don't expect perfection. Don't demand immediate results. Vibration is movement. There will be days when you feel down, moments when the chaos seems stronger. But if you keep choosing to get up, adjust, and regain your frequency, the field around you will inevitably shift. Tesla said that the energy of the universe is abundant and always available. You just need to learn to tune in. Now think about the impact of applying these steps in your life. Imagine waking up with awareness of your vibration, deliberately choosing how to align yourself, acting coherently, protecting your energy, expanding it to others, practicing consistently, and trusting. What changes would emerge in your relationships? How would your health transform? How would your worldview be altered? What if millions of people chose to live this way at the same time? Would we still see so much chaos, so much war, so much disharmony? The future isn't written in stone. It's woven into frequencies. With every thought, every emotion, every choice, you participate in shaping that future. The question isn't whether you have power, but whether you'll have the courage to use it. The courage to accept that you're not a victim of circumstances, but a creator of vibrations that build realities. The silence of the universe isn't indifference. It's a precise response to what you hold dear. As we conclude this journey, it's important to remember, Change doesn't begin with grandiose speeches, but with quiet vibrations. It begins when you take a deep breath in the face of fear and choose to trust. When you give thanks for something simple in the midst of scarcity. When you offer peace even in the face of anger. It's these small choices that, accumulated, transform your life, and little by little, the entire world. Tesla left us the map. It's up to us to walk it. And now I want to look directly at you, who have made it this far. If this content touched your heart, if it made you reflect, if it awakened in you a desire to shift your frequency, I have a sincere request. Subscribe to this channel, not just to support, but to continue receiving content that expands consciousness and strengthens your journey. Like this video, because every gesture you make expands the reach of this message and can bring transformation to someone who needs to hear it right now. And if you feel it in your heart, share your experiences, questions, or reflections in the comments. You can even write anonymously if you wish, but allow your voice to be part of this field, because by sharing, you not only receive, but also transmit vibrations that can inspire and help others. Remember, you don't attract what you desire, but what is in your frequency, and the life you seek already exists in potential, just waiting for you to align with it. So choose. Choose the vibration of trust, clarity, and love. Choose to be the note that harmonizes amidst the noise. And from now on, may every gesture, every thought, and every emotion be the seeds of the new reality you have decided to live. The symphony is just beginning, and the universe eagerly awaits the music you will play.